We visited them in Fredericksburg. And I don't know how it came up, but something about they should get a pet. They should get a dog. And Grandpa was adamantly opposed to getting a dog. So Richard and I went to the thrift store, and we found a stuffed dog, and we put it in a cardboard box. And as we walked into the house, I was moving the box, and I was making scratching noises under the box. And Grandpa was like, "What's that?" So I said, "It's a dog for you, Grandpa, it's a dog." And he was so curious. He wasn't even mad. I thought he'd be mad, but he just could not believe we would have brought a dog. So when they opened it up and it was a stuffed dog, he really thought it was hilarious. And we talked about the dog, and I said how we bought it at the thrift store, and then it smells like little Mexican kids, you know. but then we went away and we came back, and he had set up this intricate thing with the dog. Brandy had gone out for the day, and he had gotten a steak out of the freezer. He pretended like he didn't know where the freezer was or anything, right? He had set the table with silverware and plate, put a steak on the plate, and he had the dog sitting there, and he had taken pictures. And he had a picture of the dog with a beer bottle, and he had a picture of a dog laying in the sewer, like the dog had gone out and he had taken red crayon and like put X's over the dog's eyes because the dog had died from drinking. And then he presented like all these photos to us of the story of the dog. It was so much fun. That was hilarious. And he gave the dog to some little Mexican kids at church.
See.
Well, because Martin isn't here, I need to tell a Martin story, and that is that Martin shared this at a family reunion a number of unions ago, so maybe you already know about it. But when we were very young and living in the first frame house there in Fort Lauderdale, Dad would give us 3 boys haircuts. We would all line up on a certain day to get our buzz cuts, and me, being the oldest, I got first. Martin, being second oldest, he got second. Well, now by then, it was really getting warm in the house. He thought that all that dripping on his head was oil dripping from the electric trimmer. And it took him quite a while to realize that no, it was sweat dripping off of his dad onto him as Dad was giving him the buzz cut. So I lucked out being firstborn and therefore first to get the haircut each time. Who else would like to share something about Grandpa Walt? Now we've heard from a grandchild. How about a great-grandchild? Any great-grandchildren have anything to say about Grandpa Walt?
Wow.
No.
I'll share one of the stories he's told us that I just can't believe is true. He talked a lot about his Great Lakes adventures. And one of the ones he told us was how his ship was in I don't know if it was a hurricane or a tornado or
A water spout.
I don't know, but he claims that he held on to the mast and the wind was blowing so hard that it blew his t-shirt off, but that he was able to hold on to the mast and survive.
And all of us went for
The collar of his t-shirt.
Wow. Huh.
And he still had that T-shirt when he died.
Oh,
Anybody else to share? Well, I'm going to have to share one more then. The best thing he ever taught me was the J-stroke for canoeing. But the way he taught it to me, I was so angry because we were at a Lutheran church picnic, and so all of my friends were going to rent canoes at Birch State Park. So there I am trying to get my canoe, and I hear the whistle.
The
You do the whistle?
blood-curdling
Do
whistle.
you do the whistle?
The dad can.
Anyway, the
it'll
whistle-
frighten the baby.
When you hear the whistle from Dad, you stop what you are doing and you report for duty.
On a run.
So I reported, and he says, "Look at all your friends. Look at them zigging back and forth in the lagoon there, dragging that oar across their laps, dripping water all over them. You're not going to be like that." I said, "Dad, I want to catch up with my friends." He said, "You're going to learn how to do the J-stroke, and you're going to be able to canoe the right way." So he made me back and forth in front of the dock, demonstrate for him he's taught me the J-stroke. And when he finally was satisfied, he says, "All right, now you can go canoe with your friends." And I said, "I'll never catch up with them." And he said, you'll catch up with them real fast because you know the J-stroke. And sure enough, I surpassed them, and some of them had even sunk their canoes. Furking, what was his name?
Joel.
Joel Verking had sunk his canoe. Anyway, I was so proud of myself as I went just cruising past them using the J-stroke because my
What's
dad
the
told me.
J-stroke?
Well, the J-stroke is you make it in the shape of a J. You're pulling with the oar and then the paddle, and then before you're done with that stroke, you kind of give it a chunk out. You see, because by pulling this way, you are actually moving yourself now to the right. When you go like that, then you're moving yourself back to the left, however it goes. But that way you're keeping straight and true, and you're not dragging the paddle over your lap, dripping water all over you. So he was a teacher, as well as a dad who just lets you be independent and lets you grow up to be who you were, or who you are. Anything else about?
So I worked part of my career in hot melt systems, so big industrial systems, automated gluing with hot melt adhesive. But years and years before that, Walt had invented a gluing system for roofing, where shingles come in a packet and then they're wrapped with a craft paper wrapper. And he made essentially a glue wheel using asphalt as the adhesive, and the wrapper would come past, the glue wheel would kiss it with glue, asphalt, and then guides would bring it down and glue it to itself. So he was well ahead of his time.
An inventor. All right, this is your last chance. Anybody else? Going once?
Well, I'll really quickly sum up what Granny said. You can watch it later, but I know she wanted it to be mentioned here. So when they were newlyweds, they had bought a chest freezer. And she was very concerned because they bought it on credit and she wasn't sure they were going to be able to pay for it. But they bought a quarter of a cow or a part of a cow, and Grandpa said, we're going to cut this up and put it in the freezer and we're going to do it all ourselves. And he even told her that they were going to make hamburger. She said, well, how are we going to make hamburger? He said, well, I've got a hamburger grinder. So they got all ready and they started to use the hamburger grinder, but it was manual and it was very difficult. And he said, well, I'm going to put a motor on there. So we got the motor on there and they got ready to try it. We were all set up and he said, stand aside. So she stood aside and they dropped the meat in and it made a perfect hamburger on the wall.
Now that's a machine.
Yeah.
And so with that, I would like to have our last words of this ceremony, the celebration of the life of Walter Henry Jameson, be his almost last words. Just a few days before he passed, he said to Mom, my glory will be heaven. So now depart in peace and with fond memories of yours and God's beloved, as we retire to fish on our way back